So I just got out of the shower, as you can see from my wet hair, and today is the day. Today is finally the day where my family and I will be headed to Vietnam. Uh, Truth be told, I am not 100% thrilled at going to Vietnam because I don't really like traveling out of Singapore. I am a very patriotic person. I think Singapore is uh, a decent country to live in. And yeah, I don't really like to go to countries where I don't like uh where I don't have a fondness of. But that's not saying I don't like Vietnam. It's just saying that unless it's not countries where I am interested to go to, like Germany and England, I don't really I'm not really keen on going to those places. But nonetheless, I am going. It's gonna be a 6 day trip. 6 day trip. Oh, this is like the longest holiday I've been in a few years because of the whole thing and my family not going to many holidays in the first place. But yeah, I'm gonna be vlogging. I'm gonna try to be vlogging most of the stuff I see there. Uh, Although, again, truth be told, I'd rather just stay in the hotel room. Yeah. So vlog time, I guess. Let's go.
You are now listening to Makarosu 8299.
Yes, I am doing this in post production because I am too embarrassed to actually record and talk at the same time. Like how the hell do vloggers do it, man? But anyways, the first day was pretty uneventful. We spent the majority of the time traveling, and by the time we reached Hanoi itself, it was late in the evening. And the first thing I noticed once I stepped foot on the Hanoi soil was that it was very, very, very cold. It was like 16 to 17 degrees, and it definitely took some time getting used to. After the flight, we boarded our minivan and traveled to our accommodation. And I would have been recording the outside of this van more to give y'all at least a bit more footage of Hanoi. But I was knocked out after like 5 minutes of traveling, as Vietnam Airlines does not exactly have the most comfortable seats, especially in economy. When I awoke, we were what I assumed to be in the town area, the part where like the narrow roads were enclosed by the neighboring shops. I'll show you all more footage later about it. I would find out that our accommodation was actually in the town area itself, and I was thankful that this hotel was a clean and comfortable one. After that, we went out to the main populated area, and the big thing I noticed about Hanoi was the sheer amount of motorcycles. Along with the motorcycles, the traffic was definitely disorganized. Crossing the road felt like that one scene in Hercules where the guy is about to hit by a barrage of arrows, but he just doesn't get hit. And while crossing the road, you need to be confident and walk at a constant pace to not get hit. Because the vehicles won't stop for you, so you needed to walk very predictably so that they can swerve to avoid you. There were very few zebra crossings and traffic lights, but hell, half the vehicles barely respected the traffic lights anyways. I am exaggerating when regarding the safety of the roads in Vietnam. I'm pretty sure if you got used to it, it's not as dangerous as I make it out to be. But as a tourist, it was definitely dangerous to me. The second day, we started the day by walking to this little historical castle place. And oh yeah, on the way there, my family and I got to see the prime time Hanoi experience during peak hours, and a bit clearer since it was daytime. And first things first, I noticed that every piece of land that wasn't the road had people selling things. Almost all the buildings near the roads were shops. There were a lot of independent fruit sellers just sitting by the roadside, and loads of other sellers of a whole array of items. The pavement, where it was often used by mostly pedestrians to commute in Singapore, was instead usually blocked off by parked motorcycles or chairs and tables laid out by roadside food vendors. We had to walk, by the side of the pavement in like a single file line, which was basically the road. And we had to do the single file line thing to not in order to not be involved in an accident. And I don't have footage of this as I needed to be fully alert while being near the roads, which is another reason why like most of the footage you see like in day one of me describing all the traffic is all footage I stole from YouTube, because I really couldn't uh vlog myself crossing the road because I was so afraid I was gonna get mowed down. But anyway, the only time where the pavement was fully available was when the building along it belonged to the government. Like, you could tell the building was sort of a government building. Though it was cold and was a bit rough the time my family and I visited Vietnam, I can only imagine what it'd be like commuting when it was warmer. Okay, so next, once we reached the castle, there was a graduating class already there, so some of our pictures included them. And the castle itself seemed to be a very historical place, as other buildings nearby had exhibitions akin to a museum that was like supplementing the history of the castle and the surrounding areas. And I personally am not too interested in early Vietnamese history, so I didn't pay much attention to the words. I just took the videos and pictures. And after that, we went to another historical exhibition area. This time, it focused on the Vietnamese War, which piqued my interest more than the castle. There was the typical museum-esque exhibition where it was just mostly words, but there were also replicas of the tanks and airplanes used and captured by the Viet Cong during the war. There was this sick like amalgamation of wreckage that was made up of all the planes that was shot down by the Viet Cong, and it looked really cool. After that, we went up to this watchtower thing that allowed a decent view. You can see me ascending the tower. It was alright. And after that, we went to eat lunch, and my father suggested we eat at this one restaurant that was allegedly opened up by the Gordon Ramsay. And I say allegedly because when we entered, it was totally empty, and the service and food was mediocre at best, which is not exactly what I associate with Gordon Ramsay. But once that was done, we walked back, miraculously having no issue with the traffic and stuff. And I slept in the hotel room while my family went out to have dinner, as at the time my body clock was not fixed yet. So by the afternoon, I was exhausted. On day 3, we would be going to Ha Long Bay, one of the places to go in Vietnam. We took a van there, and I was thankful we weren't walking there. The ride took about 3 hours, and we got to Hanoi's, I guess, city area in around like 20 minutes of traveling. And while looking through the window, it was a lot less congested, and the pavement was a lot more open. But there were also a whole lot less people. I also noticed a lot of auto shops for some reason, and before long the mountains became more visible after a few hours of traveling, and we were fast approaching the bay. We turned into this sort of island thing that I noticed had a lot of abandoned buildings. It was kind of strange seeing how some buildings were either half completed or fully completed, but the interior was completely empty. Some buildings will also open up for business, which made it even more strange. Like, you see this one business that was wedged in between two completely abandoned buildings. Anyways, we entered the building where most of the other tourists were waiting, and they were waiting for the boat that would bring us to the cruise, to like the actual cruise ship. And we boarded it, and we were on our merry way. The thing I was most impressed about the cruise itself were the rooms that we were sleeping in. Not only does the window placement here allow you to wake up to the sights of Ha Long Bay, you can also enjoy it while having a bath. And oh yeah, the mountains itself were also epic. It really felt like I was staring at something that had millions of histories behind it. And every time I thought I had a decent shot some other mountain with a new funky shape made me want to reopen my camera to record again and again. And I recorded a lot while I was here and have now realized I will only use like 10% of the footage. After settling into our rooms, we went cave exploring on one of the islands. And on the way to said cave, we took a bus, and I realized that there were actually villagers and people living on these islands. And it was cool seeing how they lived, and it looked like they were undergoing like some sort of cement upgrades to the village. You in the island itself, you could see businesses, you could see hotels, you could see locals just like relaxing, some working. It was pretty different. Yeah, it was different compared to Singapore, and uh, I felt like a capital T tourist and kind of a dickhead in the air conditioned bus filming the locals doing backbreaking labor. I imagine what it's like living in these sort of villages and waking up and being surrounded by mountains. That sounds uh pretty epic. I'm not oh my god, I'm using the same adjectives like my previous video. I apologize. I'll learn some new adjectives. But anyways, suppressing my guilt, we pressed into the cave. But first, we had to climb a few flights of stairs, and that allowed us to admire the view even more, which I will admit the view was pretty breathtaking. Now, as far as I could tell, this type of cave isn't one that's catered exclusively to tourists, as in, like, there's no danger and stuff. Because this cave had so many areas where you needed to crouch, needed to hold on to something as to not fall, and if you looked up, there were spikes that would impale you if God was having a bad day. But I was fine with that because, like the mountains, this feels really authentic and historical. And I don't think I've ever been to a real cave that doesn't really that looks like it's been mostly left alone. And to be honest, I just want to keep talking so y'all can see more of this footage. I don't want it to go to waste. Afterwards, we went back by boat, and I slept again while my family went to eat dinner without me. Day 4 was the day we had to leave the cruise ship and Halong Bay itself. The morning of day 4, we didn't really do much. We just sort of lazed around and admired the mountains. My mom went for yoga on the deck of the ship, and I followed, though I would quickly regret this decision as it was absolutely freezing on the top deck. But I got to see the sunset, which half made it up, and I would have recorded more, but it was so cold I couldn't hold my position for more than 10 seconds, and I had to keep moving to generate body heat. But during the afternoon, we got out of Halong Bay, and normally we would have taken the same van that brought us here back to the hotel, but my mom wanted us to take the train, and that would have been a cool idea, but the train station was a 20-minute walk back to the hotel, which I, for a lack of better word, dreaded. We reached the train station but had to wait 2 hours for our train, so we went to this cafe and enjoyed some hot chocolate. And while drinking our chocolate, we witnessed like 2 motorcycle accidents. I'm not kidding. We witnessed like 2 actual motorcycle accidents, though thankfully it was nothing too major. I watched Catch Me If You Can from on Netflix, starring Calvin Candy and the guy from Castaway. It was a 7 out of 10 movie. On the train, we got to see more of the city area. I saw some people making makeshift farms by the train tracks, which was interesting, as well as a few areas of thick vegetation, a far cry from the town area. After recording footage, I went to sleep and we arrived at our destination like an hour and a half later. We had to walk back, unfortunately, but before long we reached our hotel and I continued my hibernation process. I stayed in the hotel room for the morning and afternoon as I felt like vomiting when I woke up. In the evening, we went to see this water puppet show that had a lot of other tourists, so I was thankful that we wouldn't be the only ones standing out. Unfortunately, the whole performance was in Vietnamese and I couldn't understand a lick of it, so I slept until the performance ended. We went to eat dinner and went to bed early as tomorrow would see us travelling back to Singapore. At 5 a.m., we packed our bags and were on our way to the airport. Now, no knock against Vietnam, a beautiful country, but I was very excited to go back home. Singapore ain't perfect, but I don't see myself moving to another country. I will hopefully stay here for the rest of my time. And besides, I'd be lying myself if I said the streets of Hanoi fit me. I'd much rather pay $10.90 for a 2-piece fried chicken meal in the Republic of Singapore. Majulah, Singapore.